Hope I'm audible and the screen visible. Welcome back to another session on data analytics using Microsoft Excel. Today, we will be looking at a few more concepts related to pivot table. Okay, thank you so much for the confirmation. So thank you all for joining back. Let's proceed. We will, as usual, start with the agenda. The recap of yesterday's session and then the agenda. So yesterday we looked at how we can format the data in a table. We saw how to create something called as pivot tables, how they are a very flexible and a very useful way of summarizing the data. Okay, rather than looking at row level detail and then trying to draw inferences from it, which could be quite a tedious task. When you have big data, lot of data, then if you have to go through each record and understand what is going on, it would be very difficult. Instead, if we summarize the data per region, per product, per category, per department, per customer, per order, right? Depending on which domain we are in, then we can draw meaningful inferences very quickly from that data. So that is the main purpose of pivot tables. Just it will help you to summarize your data and present it properly. So that is what we had seen yesterday. We will continue. Today we will look at get pivot data feature. Then we will look at some calculated fields that can be created on pivot data. And also we will look at an option called as show data as. Different inbuilt calculations that are there in Excel can be explored from this option. Okay, there are a lot of inbuilt calculations which we shall look at. So I will be using the same data source which we used yesterday, the coffee chain data. So here's my data. Okay, the first basic thing is you might want to go ahead and check the data types. Okay, because especially with date fields, because if you don't assign the data type as a date over here, later when you try to insert a date, slicer kind of a thing, it wouldn't work. So basic formatting, whatever has to be done, you can go ahead and do it on your raw data itself. Like in this case, I will make it a number, area code without decimals. We can select the field, go up to the home ribbon, and then assign a proper data type to the fields. So like I did yesterday, all these are text and all these are related to currency. So we'll choose currency, post which you can go and choose an appropriate currency symbol and also remove the decimals if not required. So my data is pretty much ready. There are no blanks, there are no duplicates. You can check for it if you want. Yesterday we saw. Now finally, I will convert this into a table first. The keyboard shortcut for that would be to hit Ctrl+T. Okay, so you can see the margin running out around the entire data. This data will become a table. Now once it becomes a table, what happens? You will get the table contextual ribbon. By going there, you can change the design, and we have certain other options which we discussed. It is always a good practice to give a name to the table. So I will start by giving it a name, coffee chain. Then the other way, another option that comes up is this small drop-down icon, which can be used for sorting as well as filtering the data. So we had seen sort and filter yesterday. Now we will proceed. This is my table which is ready, but I need to create a pivot table from here. Okay, so how to do that? We can either go to the insert ribbon and select pivot table, or on the table ribbon also, we have this option called as summarize with pivot table. Once I select it, it will come. So this is the complete range of data. The complete data in the coffee chain table is what I would like to use and create a pivot table with it on a new worksheet. Okay, on a new worksheet. So once I click OK, you will notice how it is created on a new worksheet. Now, one basic thing that I will do, just so that all of you can see it very clearly, is increase the font size and slightly increase the column width. Okay, the moment we create a pivot table, you see this is the name of the pivot table up here. Okay, so when you go to pivot table analyze, here it comes. You can also give a name to your pivot table so that it's easier, for you to recognize which table is present where. So let's call this we'll practice get data feature here. So get data pivot, I will call it. Okay. And there should not be any spaces between the words. You can connect them through an underscore or a hyphen mark, but not a space. All right. You can notice that whatever name I have given to my pivot table over here, the same thing is appearing here on the header of the pivot table. Okay. Now, here we get the pivot table fields. List of all the fields in that data connection would appear. We have a filters box, columns box, rows and values. So as we discussed yesterday, when you drag and drop something into these, accordingly, the pivot table will take a structure. So suppose I take date to the columns shelf. Okay, then you can see how they are getting arranged as columns. And when we talk about date field, it is always rolled up by year. You can see, though we have the complete date in our data source, it is rolling it up by year. We can drill down to quarter and date if necessary. And this buttons, the plus and minus, to do a drill down and a roll up will be available. So like that, we can drill down and roll up. All right, let me roll back. Now I want to change the way that it is represented over here. Okay, I will take this date field into the rows shelf and I'm going to remove quarters and years. Okay, so just by date, only date, quarter and this. If you want, if you're not getting the Jan, Feb, let me do it one more time. Removed everything. I'm going to put back date. All right, by default, what happens when you use date? It is going to roll it up, right? We know that it will roll it up. So now we go under this group selection. In the pivot table analyze ribbon, we have group selection. So I'll go there and I am going to use the group field option because I don't want to see all of this data in detail. I'm just interested in getting the information at month level of detail. All right, we just need the data per month. Now, because I have taken date to rows box, you can see how it is arranged as rows. Years are arranged as rows. That is the purpose of columns and rows. Now, let me click on OK. This is what I want. Months. All right. And let's say I'm interested in looking at the sales. So I'll take sales into the values shelf. By default, it is summarized with sum as the aggregation. This also we know. Yesterday we had discussed that it is always sum that comes up as the aggregation. So we are seeing sum of sales. Now, if you might want to change the sum to something else like average or so, you can click on that I, isn't it? You can click there on I, that symbol, and then you can choose a different aggregation if required. I'm going to cancel it for now because I'm happy with sum of sales.